In the quiet suburbs of a gated community, where manicured lawns hid simmering prejudices, a woman known only as Karen patrolled like a self-appointed guardian. Her sharp eyes scanned every driveway, every mailbox, enforcing rules that bent to her whims. One sweltering afternoon, she marched up to a modest home where a young black couple had just settled in. The wife, exhausted from recent childbirth, cradled her newborn in her arms on the porch, seeking a moment of peace in the fresh air. Karen's face twisted in disapproval as she approached, her voice slicing through the calm like a knife. Though no words were exchanged in the retelling, only the weight of her glare and pointed gestures demanding compliance. The demand was outrageous. Hand over the child. Karen's posture screamed accusation, as if the baby's cries violated some unspoken code, but deeper currents ran beneath, currents of suspicion rooted in skin color and assumptions about who belonged. The wife clutched her infant tighter, her body trembling with a mix of fatigue and fear, while her husband watched from inside, his military-honed instincts alerting him to the brewing storm. Unbeknownst to Karen, this man was no ordinary resident. His past was forged in the fires of elite training, where precision and resolve turned the tide of impossible odds. As Karen persisted, gesturing wildly toward the child, the air thickened with unspoken threats, pulling viewers into a web of injustice that promised to unravel spectacularly. What began as a petty neighborhood dispute was escalating into a confrontation that would expose the ugly underbelly of hidden biases, leaving one question hanging: how far would entitlement push before it shattered against unyielding strength? The scene built like a gathering thundercloud, each moment stretching the tension until it begged for release, drawing the audience deeper into the narrative's grip. The story traced back to Marcus, a decorated Navy SEAL who had served multiple tours in shadowed corners of the world, facing dangers that honed his body and mind into instruments of quiet power. After years of deployment, he yearned for stability, a place to build a life with his wife, Elena, a dedicated nurse whose gentle spirit complemented his steadfast resolve. Their newborn son, Jamal, arrived like a beacon of hope, his tiny fists grasping at the future they envisioned. They chose Willow Creek Estates, a serene neighborhood in the American heartland, drawn by its promises of community and safety, promises that masked the subtle barriers woven into its fabric. From the moment they moved in, subtle undercurrents of unease rippled through the community. Neighbors' smiles were fleeting, their gazes lingering a beat too long on the family's darker skin. Whispers circulated at HOA meetings about maintaining standards, code for preserving a certain homogeneity. Marcus noticed the patterns early, the extra scrutiny on their recycling bins, the anonymous notes about lawn maintenance that ignored similar lapses from others. Elena, still recovering from a difficult birth, felt the isolation keenly as she navigated motherhood in this unfamiliar terrain. Jamal's cries echoed in the night, a natural symphony that drew no complaints from most, but amplified in the minds of those predisposed to find fault. Karen, the HOA president, embodied the neighborhood's unspoken gatekeeping. A widow in her late 50s, she had risen to her position through relentless involvement, turning rules into weapons to assert control. Her home was impeccable, her life a routine of patrols and reports, fueled by a deep-seated discomfort with change. When the family arrived, her vigilance sharpened. She documented their comings and goings, convinced that their presence disrupted the harmony she guarded. Inspired by real accounts of racial profiling in suburban enclaves where families of color faced baseless accusations, Karen's biases festered unchecked. One day, spotting Elena with Jamal in the yard, Karen's suspicions boiled over. The baby's light complexion, a blend of heritage, triggered her irrational doubts, perhaps a misguided belief that the child didn't fit the family, a cruel echo of historical injustices where authorities separated families based on color. As days turned to weeks, the harassment built subtly at first, violation notices for minor infractions, like a stroller left briefly on the driveway. Marcus, drawing on his SEAL discipline, chose observation over confrontation, documenting everything while shielding Elena from the worst. But curiosity mounted. What would push this simmering tension to a boil? The neighborhood's facade of civility cracked, revealing the emotional stakes of belonging in a place that silently questioned your right to be there. The tension escalated like a slow-burning fuse, each incident layering injustice upon the family. Karen's patrols became more frequent, her notepad filling with perceived slights. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she confronted Elena directly in the cul-de-sac, her body language aggressive, pointing accusatorily at Jamal nestled in his carrier. The demand was clear in her insistent motions. She wanted proof, documentation that this child truly belonged to them, fueled by a racist delusion that black parents couldn't possibly raise a child without scrutiny. Elena's heart raced, her protective instincts flaring as she backed away, but Karen pressed on, her entitlement blinding her to the pain she inflicted. Marcus observed from afar, his SEAL training keeping him composed, but inside, anger simmered. He recalled missions where patience was key, waiting for the right moment to strike. The neighborhood's complicity added to the stakes. Other residents averted eyes, whispering support for Karen's vigilance in private chats. Reports of similar real-life incidents flooded Marcus's research. Families harassed over baseless child welfare calls, rooted in racial bias, where authorities were weaponized against the innocent. Elena's exhaustion deepened, her joy in motherhood tainted by constant vigilance. Jamal's innocent coups became potential triggers, each one a reminder of their precarious position. As weeks passed, Karen's actions grew bolder. She rallied a small group of like-minded neighbors, circulating petitions disguised as community concerns. Violation notices piled up, noise complaints for Jamal's cries, despite the family's soundproofing efforts. Landscaping fines for plants deemed non-native, a thinly veiled jab at their cultural heritage. Marcus countered methodically, attending HOA meetings where stares followed him, submitting appeals that highlighted disparities. How white families' barbecues went unpunished while their quiet gatherings drew warnings. The emotional toll mounted. Elena's confidence wavered, tears shed in private as she questioned their choice of home. Marcus supported her silently, his resolve hardening like steel under pressure. The injustice peaked one fateful morning. Karen arrived unannounced, pounding on the door with a fervor that shook the frame. Elena, alone with Jamal, opened it cautiously. Karen's gestures were frantic, insisting on inspecting the home for child safety, her eyes fixated on the baby. The implication was clear: doubt in their parenting, steeped in racial stereotypes that painted black families as inherently unstable. Elena refused, her body blocking the entrance. But Karen pushed forward, her hand reaching out as if to seize Jamal. The struggle was brief but intense, Elena's arms wrapping protectively around her son as Karen's persistence crossed into invasion. Marcus, returning from a run, witnessed the scene unfold, his blood boiling at the sight of his wife's distress. This moment crystallized the stakes. The family's dream of peace shattered under relentless pressure, echoing broader societal ills where racism masqueraded as concern. Marcus's military background whispered strategies, gather evidence, expose weaknesses, but the human cost weighed heavy. Elena's resilience cracked, her once vibrant spirit dimmed by fear. Jamal, sensing the turmoil, wailed inconsolably, his cries a soundtrack to the rising storm. Neighbors peeked from windows, some sympathetic but silent, others nodding approval of Karen. The peak arrived on a crisp autumn day, the neighborhood hushed under gray skies. Karen, emboldened by her unchecked power, orchestrated her boldest move yet: a forced inspection, backed by a hired enforcer from the HOA's roster. She stormed the property line, her companion, a burly man with a clipboard, trailing behind, ready to document and intimidate. Elena, home with Jamal, felt the intrusion like a physical blow as Karen gestured demandingly toward the baby, insisting on verifying his well-being through some twisted logic of racial doubt. The enforcer stepped forward, his presence looming as if to physically remove the child from Elena's arms. Marcus, alerted by a neighbor's discreet warning, returned swiftly. His approach was silent, a shadow materializing from the periphery. As Karen reached out, her hand inches from Jamal, Marcus intervened with calculated precision. He positioned himself between them, his stance unyielding, revealing the tattoo on his forearm, a subtle emblem of his SEAL unit, a symbol of battles won in silence. Karen's eyes widened, her confidence fracturing as she processed the man before her. Not the passive newcomer she dismissed, but a veteran of elite forces, trained in scenarios far graver than suburban squabbles. The confrontation intensified without a word spoken. Actions conveyed the drama. Marcus's gaze locked on Karen's, conveying depths of resolve that made her falter. The enforcer hesitated, sensing the shift in power dynamics. Karen's gestures grew frantic, attempting to rally authority, but Marcus produced his documentation, a folder thick with evidence of her biased actions, including records of similar harassments against other minority families. He handed it to the enforcer, who scanned it, his posture deflating as the implications dawned. In that charged moment, the emotional pinnacle surged.